Hello and welcome back to another episode of Transport Fever 2. We're here in Brookshire County, just outside of our city of Pittsburgh, where in the last video we connected it up to a new food line. And in this video we're going to be focusing around Pittsburgh yet again, at least for a little bit, as we're going to go across the map, upgrading our lines, optimizing line rates, and doing some detailing to better suit some of the more busy and upgraded areas on the map. I think this is a good time to check in on everything across the map, since now every city is growing to some degree and receiving resources from at least one area. So this seems like a good enough time as ever to make sure everything's running properly, finish up any things that we maybe left unfinished from previous projects, and gives us a good sort of slow point to start to build up money for some of the larger projects we're going to have to start doing soon. Now, first and foremost, I want to get the city of Pittsburgh getting all the food that it needs. So we can see here it needs a supply of 125, and we're only providing about 46, 47 of that. And I believe that's largely restricted by this food truck line here. So first things first, we're going to get everything on this food line up to speed and being able to meet this 125 food requirement for Pittsburgh. And then once we're done with that, we'll look into some other areas. And so let's get started with probably the most expensive part of upgrading this, our ship line. We can see here 4 boats is about the same number, so the boat rate is at 135, the city needs 125, and then remember the boats are only bringing half the amount of food back to the city, so really the rate that food's being brought to this port is about 70, it's probably closer to like 66, but if we double the amount of ships, we should double that, and we would then be getting this 135 back into this industry, which should fully meet this demand. So we'll grab all this, and hopefully we have enough money to just duplicate all 4 of those. Now they're all going to come out from down here at the food processing plant, but they will slowly spread out along the line as needed. We'll worry about that once they're sort of going around, but I believe it should update instantly. We now have a rate of 270, and that should get us a little bit over what this number is requesting. So then the obvious next step here is to increase this truck line rate, and this will require a couple more vehicles than what we currently have. Again, we'll want that around the 130 number. 136 I think is almost perfect with what the boats will be doing. So that'll be just fine, and it gives us a little bit of room to grow here in the city of Pittsburgh. And then looking over on this end with the farms, everything should be good here since this one farm here is producing 400 grain. So really we don't need this connection here, but I figured we'd have it since, it's still making us money if we take a look at the overall line. We're making money from it, and when we start to expand these boats even further, we don't really have to worry about creating this line once we get there. And then one last thing I'm seeing here in Pittsburgh is a lot of our bus stops have a good amount of people waiting. So we'll just grab this, and we could probably afford to double, if not even triple, the amount of vehicles on this line, but we'll leave it with just 4 and see how it can handle that demand. Alright, now while we wait for everything in Pittsburgh to get settled in and making us even more money, let's move on to the next area that we will probably want to start upgrading. Alright, and we are now over here by our Portland farms, where our next area of interest is going to be, and I really want to start ramping up this food processing plant here and get this to really start putting out food for Salt Lake City as well as Portland, Houston does not need food yet, I believe, so we can't supply Houston just yet. However, we can take a look here and see that we're not fully supplying either city with as much food as it needs, so there's definitely room for improvement there. And so the way I think I want to go about this is by coming back over to this farm and connecting this back up to the food processing plant that we sort of had back when we first started this project, and we just didn't really have the money coming in that we needed for it to really be viable. But I think now we can definitely afford to get a line coming from this farm into the food processing plant. And the reason we're doing that instead of upgrading these boats, at least for this purpose, is so we can get more grain coming into this food processing plant so that we can send our boats back to Portland with much more food than they're currently taking. So we can take a look here with these ships. The ships coming in with grain are coming in with a full load, and then the ones leaving the food processing plant are hardly even leaving like a quarter full of resources. And so that's really why we're not going to upgrade the ships for this purpose and just increase the amount of grain that we're dropping off here. We need another source bringing grain to the food processing plant. So then maybe we can fully max out these boats on both trips so that then we can really start to make a lot of money with this. And you can already see just currently with what we're doing, we're making probably about 800,000 per period extra in profit. I think we could get these numbers up closer to 3 million just simply by adding a second truck line that directly feeds the food processing plant. And so now that we have our slightly bigger and slightly faster horses than when we first tried this around, let's start by grabbing 25 horses, and we'll get those running on a line from here directly into our food processing plant. Now we could also upgrade these boats, but I think I'm going to leave that for now because that might be a good amount of money upgrading all these to these type of boats. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be 8 million to do that. So I'm happy leaving this with the boats that we're currently running. We don't really have an issue with them. And then once these trucks start bringing grain into the food processing plant, we can go from there and start to math out all of the line rates and figure out what exactly we need. So now while we let everything with our farms start to settle in and even out, I want to take a look at our passenger line here, and we're going to take a bit of a gamble with this, as I'm not really sure how this is going to work out, but if it works out how I'm thinking it is in my head, this might finally be able to make us able to earn some money on this line instead of it just being sort of a money sink just for the sake of moving passengers. And so we chose this engine because it was pretty cheap and very cheap to run in terms of maintenance. However, it was very limited by its top speed. Now, recently we've been unlocking a lot more engines, and some of them are much faster. However, their running cost is a lot higher. But I think the higher top speed could outweigh the running costs, since we'll be moving these passengers significantly quicker across the map, and that might even help increase demand. So there's a chance it could be a win-win, and there's also a very good chance that it just ends up being a really expensive train, and we just don't ever end up making money on this for the time being. Now we're going to sort of test drive this theory by taking both of these trains and just replacing it with a single train. Theoretically, with double the top speed, or roughly double the top speed, the frequency should stay about the same per station. So hopefully there won't be any issues with that. So I guess with that, let's finally sort of take the plunge on this experiment, and we'll sell... I guess we can just sell both the trains. We're not really going to use them for anything. And then we'll come over here and build whatever our new train is going to be. So this is the train that we're going to end up going with. It's a B&O 460 engine with a bunch of these passenger cars mixed in with it. They're all about the same in terms of running cost and capacity. This is all from the Steam Workshop, so hopefully it's balanced and works properly with this time period, but we'll buy it, and then we should be able to just set it on that line, and as soon as we hit play, it should go off all on its own. And here's our brand new train ready to go top speed straight for Salt Lake City, and I'd really love to see this train make us money, but unfortunately we'll just have to sort of wait and see what happens. Alright, so now it looks like back to our farms. The grain line that we just put up is starting to consistently bring food back and forth. The trucks are naturally going to slowly spread out, but it looks like we're definitely producing more food. And if we take a look here, our Portland boats are starting to grab some more food going back. Let's just take a look at the consumers, and we can see Salt Lake City is actually demanding more. However, I don't know if this boat... Okay, this line can handle the increased rate. I guess Portland just simply doesn't need quite as much food just yet, but the money that we might lose from this, although it looks like we're actually making money in some instances, but if we ever lose money from here, we'd really be making it back on these boat trips by filling them up slightly more so that they can make up the money instead of trying to make up the money with this truck line. And now, after looking around a bit longer at these numbers, we do have a pretty good increase in the amount of food that these boats are taking back. I believe they're starting to head back almost half full instead of being only a quarter full or only carrying about 10 to 15 food. So if we take a look, we should start to be able to see that affected in the finances. You can sort of see it looks like it's starting to increase here. Obviously boats take a while to move, so to see the effects of this will take a while. But we did just before we cut to here, increase the line rate for this food line so that it is able to handle the max amount of food for Portland. However, I'm starting to think we might have actually outgrown our area for food, since we're dropping it off here, but we have all this food up here and out here that isn't getting reached by our truck stop. So I think the next best temporary solution is to add a truck stop here so we can get rid of this old one and then build this new one just about here. We can see that covers pretty much all of the existing food. Let's actually place a truck stop instead of a bus stop. But you can see here that stop is covering pretty much all of our food industries. Besides maybe a few houses down here that need food, but that should still get us close to 100% on our supply. It'll just, of course, take a while for things to update. And of course, we've accidentally created a traffic jam with the new vehicles we've put in, so we're gonna have to reverse some of these and hope that that just loosens it up just a bit. And so I think I might also change this so that both lines can use the other platform as an alternate platform. That should help out once we get things going. It looks like we might have to flip around a few more trucks. And it looks like that might start clearing things out. Alright, so now things are finally looking fixed in terms of the traffic here. All we had to do is add a third platform and allow some of these trucks to work through it. Now, it's not it's not a permanent solution. I think I do want to maybe add a truck stop over here for food and then keep the grain unload sort of separate from there. So we'll leave that for the future as long as this doesn't get all stuck up again. But I think now everything should work as long as we don't flood it with more trucks again straight from the road depot. And now I want to come back to our train here because I noticed something interesting as we were working on unclogging that traffic jam. It's actually running with significantly more passengers than the trains previously. And I think if we take a look here, we finally earned some money in one of these financial periods. So we can see here we've actually made about 1.5 million in the previous period. And taking a look at some of these stations, they're looking pretty full, and I think this train will run almost full at all of these stations, especially Portland. So I guess speed has that much influence on demand, so that's definitely something to keep in mind for future passenger lines. Especially when we travel long distances by train, having a high-speed train can really influence how many people are willing to take a line. And so, with all this new information sort of revealed to us with this train, we're going to let this go and do its own thing for a little bit. We'll let things start to even out, and then if we start to see more demand than what our train can actually handle, we might add a second one, or maybe even make this one longer, since it seems to be handling that just fine as well. But again, this is a huge win for us and something we really needed in terms of our finances. We're about to get above 10 million, which is something we haven't really done in quite a while, and hopefully all the money coming in from this new and improved line will greatly help with funding future projects. And now I want to come back to Pittsburgh, that our boats have had a good amount of time to start to spread out across the line. Let's just see how things are going. So, as a line overall, we can see just how much doubling the amount of boats has increased our profits here. This is consistently running at probably a little over 1 million. You can see here with the balance number. And then we can come in and take a look at our food truck here. Although this one is a little bit less consistent. Again, with lines like this, a lot of it's being made up by the boats or larger vehicles along the line. So I'm not too worried if this line is just under earning us money, but it's a necessary part of delivering the goods. And so now that we have a good amount of money sitting in our bank, I want to come back to these quarries that we placed recently for this construction materials line, and I think we can finally come through and detail it up with all the landscaping that needed to be done. We sort of had to push it off just due to how much the landscaping would cost, but I think we're in a pretty good spot to start just sort of taking it slow, letting the map do its thing, and we can focus on making this area look really nice. Alright, and now after a while of detailing, this quarry area looks so much better than it did before. Even zoomed out, it looks really good, and I'm excited. There's a lot of room for expansion. We could add another quarry over here, another one down here, maybe even get something over here, but I think for now this is really good. This just really gets my mind going with ideas for upgrades and other truck stops in this area that we can use for loading, but we'll leave this alone for now and continue moving to other areas of the map. So now the last area I want to take a look at is our sawmill here, and I think I want to get both of these cities sort of supplied with about 100 tools each. Lincoln is almost there. Santa Rosa is only about half there, so there's a lot more work to be done with that. So let's get started on it. I think first things first, let's check and make sure this line rate can handle the 100 required for tools. So we'll just replace it with these upgraded horses, and that should get us just about there. 109 is good for us. And then over on the Lincoln side, taking a look at this line, that's at a rate of 85, which is pretty close. So hopefully we don't have to add too many more vehicles to get this to 100. If we bring that up to a nice even 40 vehicles, that gets us up to 94, which is just under what we need. 2 more vehicles should be good. 99, which I'm okay with leaving. So now those are going, and the last thing we need to focus on is the train line between them. Now, we're probably going to do something similar, and let's just take a look at what our options are for trains. Alright, and so I think we're going to upgrade this line to a 280 Baldwin Class 56 engine, and we have almost the same amount of cars, but we have 2 more flat cars and 1 more box car, and I think this will work a lot better. Hopefully it'll get up to its top speed a little quicker. The overall top speed of this train should be slightly faster. We'll just replace it and see what happens. Now, we're going to have to fine-tune the line rate here because we're up to 300, which we might have actually done this perfectly. So in order to get 100 tools in each city, we want our train, if the load is split 2/3 to 1/3, which is what it is with the current configuration of cars, we should be taking 2/3 planks from this rate, so 200 planks over to the Santa Rosa Tools Factory, and then 1/3 for the box cars of this rate is roughly 100, which means we'll be bringing about 100 tools back on the return trip every period for this rate. So we actually didn't have to get a 4th train. All we had to do is really just upgrade it slightly, and we can take a look here at what this train looks like now. A much nicer looking engine, much more powerful, able to carry a slightly longer train than before, and I think I'm happy with where we're at on our limits with this tools factory. As mentioned before, it is sort of hinging on better vehicles, so we don't have such a huge amount of traffic on this road coming into the sawmill, but I think this is a sort of happy medium for now. And so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at everything we've done in this video in closer detail, and then when we come back, we will recap everything we've done, take a look at it, and make sure everything is working as intended, and then we'll also talk about some future projects and other things I have in mind. Alright, and so coming back to Pittsburgh, sort of where we started this video off, let's just take a look at how everything's doing. Our boat line, finances, doing very well since we've upgraded. There's really no doubt that this won't make us money at all, so everything will be working just fine with this. And if we take a look at the actual city itself, it's actually filled in all the streets that we placed in the last video. So I think maybe we might build some of these bridges for the city, because I'm worried it'll just build out through here without building bridges. I'd really like to see the city expand across the river, but we'll worry about that later on. We can take a look at the charts here and just see how much the city has exploded since we started this video, really. I mean, you can see it's almost doubled or tripled in population since we added this food line. Let's take a look at the food trucks. Those are still sort of about even on its money, so again, that's nothing we really need to worry about. But let's move on to the next area. So next we have our farms over by Portland. This seems to be doing pretty well. The truck line, now that's maybe a little more consistent, we can see is making a profit, just barely in some cases, but that's all that really matters. The more important part is that this food processing plant is working very well. I believe it upgraded a level since we've added that line. And if we take a look at this boat, it's leaving about half full. Obviously, Portland doesn't need quite that much food yet, but it's just nice to have that for the future. And all of our Salt Lake City food issues should be doing pretty well. Although, one thing I forgot to upgrade was the actual truck line into the city itself. So let's maybe just get 1 or 2 more vehicles there. We can see the rate here, only sitting at about 97. So let's get that up to 20 vehicles. And I think 108 is a good spot to stop here. And then next we have our new and improved train starting to make its way just into Portland right now. We can take a look at its finances and see it's been doing very well over the last couple of financial periods, as it's carrying an almost full load of passengers pretty much every time. You can see it's full right now. The frequency is extremely low at 30 minutes, which is something that we're going to maybe think about bringing up, since while we're here, we can take a look at Portland. We have about 200 people waiting here, and this train's not even going to be able to take about half of those. So I'm debating on whether we just make this a really long train, or if we get a second one. I'm more leaning towards getting a second train, increasing frequency. That might really help to boost things up on this line. Let's just take a look at the other stations and see what the demand is there. So Salt Lake City is always probably going to be a little on the lower end, just because it's in the middle of the route. But if we come over to Houston, Houston already has 80 people waiting, and that's only the train halfway on that route because it just ended over in Portland. It has to make that trip all the way back over to Houston. So we'll probably see about 150 people waiting in Houston by the time that train gets over here. And then lastly, we have our sawmill line upgrade that we did, which was really just this new train. We can take a look at the overall line and the finances and see things are looking good. We'll see just exactly how good this is as time goes on. But as long as we're still continuing to earn money, I'm not too worried about this line. It should pretty much always be doing good for us. The only thing I am a little worried about is running this station out of planks, although it doesn't seem like it is. I think it was at about 180 to 200 earlier before we upgraded this train. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it and make sure things are adjusted properly. But we can see here the sawmill is producing at a rate of 205, and this train is just over 300, so maybe it is taking slightly more, but over the long run it should even out pretty well. And so now as for next steps and future projects, I think a lot of these cities, now that they're growing, are starting to get pretty big, so we're going to have to start revamping the bus networks in a lot of these cities, and now that they're getting bigger, we can actually start to think about demand between residential, commercial, and industrial, as well as connecting to any sort of public transportation outside of the city, so train stations and all of that. So that's something to look forward to. And then I still think our next passenger connection is going to be between Pittsburgh and Allentown, probably by train. However, the only thing with Allentown is I think we're going to have to think where we place this station so that it can eventually connect up to Portland in the far future. That is a pretty ambitious project, so maybe we won't worry about the orientation for Portland since that might not happen for quite a while, but connecting those two cities is definitely up there, as they seem to be a pretty easy connection, and after upgrading our train we can see just how easy and profitable passenger rail can be. And of course there's other options for connections such as Lincoln to Tacoma, and maybe even Tacoma back to Houston, although the terrain's a little rough through there, so if we ever did that, we would need a good amount of money saved up in order to successfully do it. And then I think I want to start thinking about getting the more advanced resources made, so machines and goods. Those are trickier because they take much more steps to get to the end product and sort of branch out more than, say, a fuel line does or a tool line. So we have the makings for a machines factory. Sort of in here we have some iron mines, coal mine, we have some steel mills, as well as I believe we need wood for machines, so we have a sawmill and some forests. So I think there's almost everything we need here. Obviously, when we come through and do that project, we will reorganize the industries, sort of group them together where they would probably best fit within all of this terrain. And then maybe sometime soon we'll finally get machines going. But that's going to be a very expensive project to do, so we will definitely need to save up money before we can do that as well. But anyway, I think with that, that's going to be all for this video. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or feedback, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.